SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
It's been a week since the iGaming industry took over Lisbon for SBC Summit 2024. Here at SBC Media, we're back in our Manchester base, but we're not quite ready to leave Lisbon behind, and we're busy reminiscing about the Blockbuster conference and reflecting on some of the content. Welcome back to iGaming Daily. I'm Charlie Horner, and today I'm joined by Ted Orme-Claye and Kieran O'Connor from the Payment Expert and Insider Sport team. And Ted and Kieran are going to give us some expert insight into their experiences from the SBC Summit last week, from their website's perspective. So just before we get started, iGaming Daily is sponsored by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. To get a free demo, go to www.optimove.com/SBC, and we'll also leave the link in the description for this episode. Okay, Ted, Kieran, first of all, few quick thoughts. How did you find last week?
Busy, I think that's everyone's sort of experience of it. But yeah, it was a really fantastic event. I think the obviously I've been here a couple of years now. I've been to the events we've done down in London, been to Barcelona a couple of times. You and me went to Toronto earlier this year. They've all been great events in their own right, but obviously Lisbon was just far bigger, wasn't it? The amount of different halls there were, the amount of different topics covered. Just the sheer amount of people who were there. It's obviously a lot has been made about how this was SBC's biggest event ever, but I think the fair play to our colleagues in the events team. I think they really smashed it out of the park with this one. It was really fantastically well organised. Absolutely,
and obviously Ted, you're an experienced stalwart of the SBC events now. But Kieran, this was your first SBC event. How did you find it?
It was quite intimidating, I think, from a debut point of view. Especially when you walk through some of the halls, it's a bit of a sensory overload when you go through the casino bits and all the flashing lights. But when you make it to the Payment Expert thing, I felt like I was at home. So that was always a good thing. But yeah, as Ted said, it was a very busy few days, and I think the events team has smashed it, and it was huge.
I think it was great speaking to people around. You'll both have had experience with this as well. You know, just speaking to people on the conference floor, and like I can't remember anyone who I spoke to who had like a sort of bad review for how they were finding it at the time. Loads of people were saying that they were getting lots of like foot traffic past their stands, you know, getting a lot of interest, just making connections and networking and all that, which is obviously what people buy their tickets for, as well as coming to the conference side of thing, which obviously the content is more just our sort of angle. Obviously, I mean, imagine you've had a lot more experience of that side of it, Charlie, with the networking and stuff, with your role, sort of meeting different like contacts and partners that we have. But yeah, I think everyone had a really good experience of it from what I saw, both from SBC and from all the various attending companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just add my 2 cents in there from the exhibition hall side of things. Yeah, the footfall was really busy, and you know, most of the halls, I think it was all the exhibitors would have had good foot traffic. I think it was a lot of energy in the room as well. But yeah, enough of the exhibition. We're here to talk about the content from your guys' perspective. You've both mentioned the inaugural Payment Expert Summit. Let's get an overview from both of you. How did you think that went, and was there any sort of particular discussions that sort of stood out to you guys? Ted, we'll come to you first.
Sure, yeah. I mean, as you said, it's the first time we've ever had sort of, SBC has had plenty of events before where we've had a dedicated a payment stage, you know, a payments arena sort of thing. That's always been there. But this is the first time I think the events guys really went all in on it and had its own sort of separate event in itself, almost, the Payment Expert Summit, which is obviously why me, Kieran, and our colleague Callum were there for the most part, covering all of that. Yeah, it was again really well put together by the guys. There were some really solid panels on there covering a lot of different stuff. We've got quite a few of them out on the site already. I think obviously the leading one was with the payment leaders panel. That was covered very well by Callum, talking about how payments companies can find the edge in these in well-regulated, well-established markets. Obviously quite a key, important discussion to have in the gambling sector right now. It was really well moderated by Andrea Magician from NeoSurf as well. And props to all the moderators actually throughout the day, and throughout the event itself, everyone did a sterling job. Kieran's also done some excellent coverage from it as well, which I think we'll get onto in a bit. I guess also just a bit of a personal reflection on my side of things. This is the first time I had a crack at public speaking at one of these events, doing some chairing and a bit of moderating duties on the aforementioned open banking panel as well. And yeah, there was a lot of really good talking points around artificial intelligence was a big one, unsurprisingly. Monica from LiveScore made some really interesting points about that on the second day of the event, from what I remember. Talking about sort of the regulatory future of it. There was a bit of a mention about EU AI regulations. I think there was quite an interesting discussion point on that, where it was predicted that within maybe 5 or 10 years' time, a lot of big gaming companies might need to appoint like a sort of chief AI officer or like head of AI, something like that, because this is something we've talked about a lot on the podcast, I think, but AI is really getting involved in various levels of gambling, isn't it? Both from where we stand on the payment side of it regarding anti-fraud, anti-money laundering, player protection, analysing player behaviour, but also in informing like product development and marketing. So I think that's quite an important one for people to keep an eye on, definitely.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right there. In terms of AI not just being used on the payment side of things, but into the products. They're going into the casino platforms. They're going into sportsbook pricing models and that kind of thing. So AI, it's not the future. It's here now. Kieran, any particular reflections from the Payment Expert Summit from your perspective?
Yeah, so this is obviously, as we mentioned, this is my first SBC Summit. The differences, I think, from this to other experience I've had since joining SBC is from the Payment Expert team, I've been sent out to a lot of events in Europe, Amsterdam at the Money 2020, as well as FinTech Week London. And the big difference is obviously is a lot of the panels were centred around payments in gambling. And I thought it was sort of a breath of fresh air in a way, because these people gave different opinions and they actually sort of spoke about how these technologies like AI and open banking are actually being used compared to some of these other conferences that I go to. It's a lot of people talking about we need to get the regulation through. This could be amazing. Everyone's bigging it up. Well, these people were quite critical and give some really good quotes, which I think hopefully we've included in the coverage that we've done.
You're always looking for those sort of sound bites or quotes or little bits of disagreements within these panels from a journalist perspective. Was there anything that you heard on any of the panels where you thought, wow, that was quite surprising, or, oh, I'm not entirely sure if I agree with that, but that could make an interesting talking point maybe?
Yeah, so the open banking panel, which Ted moderated, which he did a fantastic job, by the way. He gave everyone else praise, but didn't really talk. Yeah, he did a fantastic job. That was a really, really, really good panel in the fact that the content was it was like quote after quote, and I was like, oh, like I could use that, I could use this. Some of the big talking points in that was the struggles that operators are having with open banking. The facts. So the panel was centred around how open banking can sort of be used from an affordability check point of view and perspective. But there has been struggles with open banking from the operator's point of view, where open banking gives them so much data that it's sometimes too much, and they're sort of struggling with that. So I think it was, can you remind me who the panellist was? Raul from...
Rahul Das from LiveScore had quite a few interesting things to say on that one, didn't he?
Yeah.
Particularly around that area of it, I think, about like, what was it? What's expected from open banking, but what is actually being achieved and what can be realistically achieved. It was kind of around that area, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, and then they also had some great quotes on sort of adoption issues that they're seeing from their customers. And we also had some payment point of view there who reassured us that open banking is a very small segment of open finance, and when certain regulations come into play, it will truly unlock its full potential. But at the minute, you've got to remind yourself and operators that what they're using is a very small cog in a big machine.
It's super interesting stuff, and I'm sure listeners can get some more insights on the Payment Expert Summit by heading over to the Payment Expert website. Ted, Kieran, we're going to take a quick break, and then after the break, we'll come back and talk about the sports side of the event.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily, where we are with Ted Orme-Claye and Kieran O'Connor from the Payment Expert and Insider Sports team here at SBC Media. We're talking all about SBC Summit 2024, which was last week. We've done the payment side. We're going to move on to the sport and the business of sport section. So, any sort of quick reflections at the start of this, Ted?
To be fair, guys, before we get into this, I know this has kind of been covered on a different panel, but I was unfortunately, due to some issues getting out of Manchester Airport on Monday morning. Yeah, it was morning, wasn't it? Yeah. I unfortunately missed the football. I was really looking forward to getting a chance to go down to Benfica's ground and watch you guys play in the, whatever it was, 27, 28 degree heat. Yeah, I just want to, while we're on the topic of sports, how was that? How did you fare?
Go on, Charlie. What was your biggest sort of points that you took from that experience? 'Cause I thought it was amazing.
My main point was that we won a game. We won a game through a heroic goal from Joe Streeter. No other notes. We'll skip over the other two games that I don't actually believe that happened. I don't quite remember. But no, it was a great experience to play over at Benfica and get to look at some of the facilities. And again, it's one of those things that really differentiates the SBC Summit from some of the other players in the crowd. How about you, Kieran? Any quick thoughts?
I thought it was amazing. Obviously, getting to walk around the stadium before we actually played the game, that was an experience in itself. Then getting changed in the changing rooms, that was another experience. And then obviously playing, that was great. I mean, we did our best, didn't we, Charlie? We did our best. We won a game. And I'll never forget the referee for disallowing my only goal that I scored.
Of course, yeah.
But it still counts, I think. But yeah, apart from that, it was a really good experience and one that I will not forget, especially, and I definitely didn't forget it the next day when I woke up with a face like a tomato from the heat that we were playing in. I forgot to take any sun cream, so that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great experience. But let's not divulge
sorry,
too
guys,
much.
I've distracted us a bit here with that one.
Let's get into the thick of the content, because SBC Summit had a huge keynote speaker, which really related to the Insider Sport beat. We had Tony Hawk giving a keynote at the Meo Arena. Guys, were you live? Were you present for the keynote? What did you make of it? How was it for you?
Yeah, I was. It was like, I feel like a broken record, but it was another just surreal experience. The first thing I would say was it was presented by another celebrity, Laura Woods, and she did a superb job, as you probably would expect. The first thing I noticed from the keynote was when he come out on stage, they played a video and he was just sort of sat there in front of this video playing. He didn't even turn around once to look at it. And the video was like clips of him doing tricks and all this stuff that the video team put together. And he didn't turn around once. I just thought, God, this guy is cool. He just sort of like this aura that he gave off was just something else. You just knew that he was the business. And I think a part of that is that something you mentioned, when you think of Tony Hawk, you don't necessarily think of the person straight away. You think of the brand. And that's sort of what he discussed in his keynote speech with Laura, and that's where the discussion went. A big thing he said about building a brand, which I've wrote an article on Insider Sport, which we'll go into more detail in this, but a big sort of thing that he said about building a brand was authenticity, and how that is key. But what got me from the whole speech and the whole discussion was the fact that he didn't actually want to be rich or famous before this. I think I'm a bit too young to really know of his roots. So I always thought he was this professional skater who wanted to be the big name, put his name on everything, but he didn't. The sort of success come from him trying to build up skateboarding as a sport, and that's where he put all of his time and effort. And it just so happened to be that he was that good and that marketable that people wanted to work with him and put his name on stuff, and that's how he built his brand. But to this day, he's still, all his ventures that he does, he's still just trying to build the sport up, which he mentioned has had an absolutely exponential growth. I mean, it's now at the Olympics, which he mentioned he couldn't believe it, and he went to the one in Paris and he said he loved it. So yeah, it was a really good keynote speech.
And Ted, I mean, I know you weren't sort of there in the building, but Tony Hawk is not only a massive name to sort of have at the event, but there's a lot of lessons to take from a sport business and sort of, as Kieran was talking about, the brand aspect. What do you think are the key takeaways for sort of sport business executives?
It's an interesting point of what Kieran mentioned, and I'd recommend people check out the article he wrote on Insider Sport as well. It was really a really solid coverage of Tony Hawk's speech. The whole point around authenticity, especially around the athletes as individuals or key sports personalities as individuals, betting is a business that is obviously, it makes a great deal of use out of brand ambassadors, doesn't it? Whether it be like footballers, obviously racing personalities like in the UK, boxers, MMA fighters, whatever. In the US, you know, NFL players, NHL players, basketball players, and so on. I think really connecting with the authenticity of who these people are, where they've come from, sort of the uniqueness of them and their personalities is really what drives marketing campaigns and branding campaigns around that. You can't just expect to slap someone's face on your brand or in an advert and for it to just suddenly bring people in. You've got to build up that connection with who they are, and that then builds up that engagement with their fans. I think that's quite an important takeaway with that focus on authenticity that Tony Hawk mentioned. I think is quite an important one to go for, as well as we've actually just sort of outside of the sports marketing thing of building up a company brand. You've got to make sure that you focus on how your authenticity is to who you are, where your roots are. I think you do see that a lot of the time in sort of like the legacy UK gambling companies have quite a big focus on this, don't they? So I think that's another important thing to take. Overall, just the thing about authenticity, sticking to your roots, sticking to a good image, and using that to connect with the right audience is quite an important message to take on. Yeah,
it's really important message, as you said there, Ted. Obviously, we mentioned it in the first half of the show, the Payment Expert Summit would have taken up a lot of your time last week. But just sticking on the sports theme, was there anything else that you guys managed to consume last week that you thought was particularly noteworthy in that sort of sector, or anything that you learned?
Yeah, I can jump on this one. I attended something. So this is something new that they introduced at SBC Summit this year, was the press conferences. Obviously, they were situated right next door to where we were doing a lot of work in the press room. I attended one that was co-hosted by Genius Sports, obviously everyone knows as one of the big leaders in sports tech and sports data globally, and AstreaBet, who are one of the leading companies in Brazil. They were talking about some of the work they're doing in Brazil at the moment with each other, particularly around the construction of and launch of a new OTT streaming platform, and the combining of the streaming side of entertainment with betting as a way to engage with audiences. Brazil is obviously, we've all seen countless and seen and written countless things about Brazil and how significant this market is going to be when it launches. The AstreaBet speaker, Felipe, who's their chief business officer, he mentioned a lot about just the sheer size of Brazil and therefore the diversity of it, particularly when it comes to like sports consumption. It's something that a lot of companies, if they're looking to seize an opportunity in that sports market and in the sports betting market, really need to take on.
Yeah, I mean, Brazil, one of the global gambling's biggest opportunities in 2025, so definitely want to keep an eye on there. Kieran, anything from your side that you thought was particularly noteworthy?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to see too much sports. Obviously, I saw Tony Hawk, but one that I saw on my last day was about integrity and how these bodies are coming together to sort of collaborate on regulation. A lot of the topics there was on Brazil as well. They mentioned a lot about Brazil, but it was quite a relevant topic because of all the integrity issues we've had in football, in betting, the betting space, with big name professional footballers like Ivan Toney, Lucas Paqueta, sort of finding themselves in hot water when it comes to match fixing or betting themselves on games. So that was a really interesting keynote, and one takeaway from that, I would say, and one of the biggest talking points, was that education is key. And one thing that Brazil is going to do is make sure they educate athletes from grassroots to professional sports to ensure they understand what actually counts as match fixing, and how you can avoid getting yourself into these situations.
Really interesting. And just very quickly, just to round off, Ted, I know you both did a couple of interviews relating to the horse racing sector. Could you give our audience a quick glimpse into what to expect from those?
Yeah, I just a brief one. I spoke with the Arena Racing Company, who are obviously quite a big stakeholder in the UK racing sector, just sort of talking about some of the things they've been working on to engage with fans and upgrade their product. It's obviously coming at quite a crucial time for racing in the UK that's been having a bit of a rocky history over the past couple of years, a few financial struggles. And I think, finding the way to connect with the audience is something that racing really needs to crack. I think this was also something that was on the topic of your discussion as well, wasn't it, Kieran, the interview you did?
Yeah, I spoke to Joshua Spark from LiveScore, and we pretty much discussed how horse racing has found itself in this sort of stagnant era and how it needs to innovate and sort of get up with times. Something that he shared from an operator and a sportsbook point of view said that some sportsbooks out there are looking at horse racing and thinking, is it even worth offering a market in this? Because it's not really bringing in much money. So we had a very good discussion, and I enjoyed it anyway, about how the sport can innovate and sort of realise its maximum potential.
I was going to say, I think that was also the topic of discussion on quite a good panel over on one of the sports betting stages that had a few guys from the betting industry involved. So I think that's worth checking out as well. But just wanted to chuck that one out there.
No, fantastic. Great conversation this afternoon, guys. So thanks, Ted. Thanks, Kieran. And thanks to our listeners. And join us next week for another episode of iGaming Daily.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.